Welcome to Unleashed at Work and Home, the show dedicated to helping veterinarians, vet techs, dog trainers, shelter and rescue workers, pet sitters, and all the other animal crazy pet professionals manage their stress and find more joy. I'm your host, Colleen Pilar, and I'm thrilled you're here with us today. Make sure you hit the subscribe button on your favorite app so that you won't miss a single episode. This episode is brought to you by our free community, the Circle of Resilient and Thriving Pet Professionals. If you like the ideas shared here, then you're invited to continue the conversation with other lifelong learners in the community. You can find out more at colleenpilar.com. It's the perfect place for you to learn cool stuff, feel good, and take action to create the life you love. Come join us. Welcome back to Unleashed at Work and Home. My guest today is Ashley Orcutt, and she is a dog trainer with Canine Cohesion in South Carolina, right? All of a sudden I'm blanking. South Carolina and North Carolina because Canine Cohesion has two locations. So welcome, Ashley, South Carolina, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me about that. A dog training place that has two locations. That's a little bit different. Two different states. Lots of them have two locations, but two states is different.
Yeah. We've got two locations. One is in Greenville, South Carolina, and the other is in Asheville, North Carolina. And so it is about an hour and a half between them. It's kind of new that we have two locations. We originally were just in Greenville, and then just in this past year, our business founder bought another business in North Carolina and now kind of is running both places.
Which is kind of cool. So when you and I spoke earlier, you told me that you trained another species before you trained animals. So tell me a little bit about what you did before you were a dog trainer and how you got into that field.
Sure. I used to work at SeaWorld in Orlando, and I worked with a whole bunch of different species of animals. My first 4 years there, I actually worked in the killer whale area and started out working with killer whales. The first year and a half that I was there, I really didn't do a lot of hands-on training. I was mostly like prepping food and just doing kind of work behind the scenes, really minor things and like shadowing trainers and learning from them. Then the second, almost 5 years, I was in the dolphin area working with bottlenose dolphins, as well as different species of birds, which was a lot of fun. And to get my job at SeaWorld, I got a Bachelor of Science degree in biology with a minor in psychology. And then throughout my education, I was doing different internships. And the first internship that I got was an internship at Clearwater Marine Aquarium in Florida. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Dolphin Tale with Winter the dolphin. She was a rescued dolphin. Anyway, she was rescued at that aquarium, and then they made a movie about her. But I did an education internship at that facility for the summer between my junior and senior year of college, where I worked with kids and just teaching them about ocean life and different things. And then after I graduated my senior year of college, I did an internship at SeaWorld in their education department, working with kids again, teaching them through camps and different things all about animals. And then in the fall of that year, I got another internship at Moat Marine Laboratory in Sarasota, where I worked with manatees. We were training the manatees to participate in research there. So they do a ton of like really cool research projects. And so the manatees were just trained to like kind of indicate when they could feel different movements in the water and stuff like that. And then we did a lot of like husbandry training behaviors. So teaching them to like do cooperative care, very similar to what we do with dogs, that sort of thing with the manatees. And so then when I was doing that internship, I applied to the job at SeaWorld, and I already, had done 3 internships. I had my education. I was scuba certified. I got my scuba certification while I was in college. And that was pretty much all the requirements that they really look for. And then what SeaWorld typically does is they invite you to do an interview and a swim test. They want to make sure that you can swim really well if you're trying to be an animal trainer there because you're working around water so much. And I did a lot of swimming growing up. I did competition swimming and different things on different teams. And so I was able to kind of pass everything that they were looking for and got the job. It was really fun, really enjoyable. I was in charge of designing enrichment for a lot of the animals. That was one of my big responsibilities there. And one of the things that I really embraced and enjoyed the most was like designing different toys for killer whales and for dolphins. So if you ever go to SeaWorld and you ask about me, that's probably what they'll tell you. I was kind of like the enrichment queen who did all of the toy making for all the animals all the time.
How cool. So was that something you had hoped to do? Like, were you always sort of an ocean person and interested in the in aquatic life? Or a question I often ask is, when you were 10, what did you think you were going to be?
Yeah, so that was my dream job when I was a kid.
It was.
I was probably about 5 years old the first time I went to SeaWorld, and I have pictures of myself as a kid, like, with the big Shamu statue. And I actually grew up in Pennsylvania, and there used to be a SeaWorld in Ohio. So I went to the SeaWorld in Ohio when I was a kid, um, which is no longer there now. And so ever since that time and seeing the people working with the animals, that's what I wanted to do. And so in high school, like my high school yearbook says, I'm going to grow up and train killer whales one day. And then I did.
And then you did.
Yep. And then, so I worked there for just almost 9 years. And then after my husband and I got married and then we had our daughter, we kind of wanted to move closer to family and just do something different. And, we also just, Florida, it was fun living in Florida, I think, especially as like a young couple and stuff. But then as we were starting our family, we kind of wanted to live somewhere a little more rural where we had more space. So that's what brought us to South Carolina.
And so a dolphin trainer in South Carolina, who's also a parent, found it a little bit challenging to be a dolphin trainer or a killer whale trainer. So
yeah, a lot of the people that I worked with at SeaWorld, I think a lot of them found it kind of challenging once they started families. Some people stayed, even throughout having kids and stuff, but the hours that you work are it's all year round. So SeaWorld doesn't close for any holidays or anything. So you're working holidays, you're working, weekends, just anytime. And I think when I returned from maternity leave and, we just had a lot going on, we were sometimes short staffed and I was asked to do overtime sometimes and just work weird hours all the time. And it was just hard, to have a little baby, like a 3-month-old baby and just be working all these weird hours and stuff. And, so that was kind of tough. And I wanted to find kind of a better work-life balance where I could, spend more time with my daughter and still be working and working with animals.
And so were you also always a dog person, or did the dog interest come later in your life?
I have been a dog person, yes, for a very long time. When I started working at SeaWorld, I got a puppy I think sometime like only a few months after I started working there. I got an Australian Shepherd puppy, and I didn't know really hardly anything about dog training. Like I just knew very little about like that. I grew up on a farm, so my parents are actually horse trainers, and they breed Morgan horses and stuff like that. So we had dogs growing up, and one of our family dogs was an Australian Shepherd, and he was just like the best dog. Just loved him. And so when I was getting a puppy, I was like, I'm going to get an Aussie. And and so my oldest dog, who I have right now, he is actually, his birthday is in a couple days. He's turning 13 years old. And he was my first like dog as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest with you, I didn't do a lot of training with him, like other than just like I knew a lot about positive reinforcement training. So I got myself a clicker and I was just like, shaping him to do fun behaviors and stuff. I really didn't do like obedience training with him. I didn't take him to any training classes. We had in Florida a dog beach where you could take your dog to just like swim and play in the ocean and be around other dogs, kind of like a giant dog park. I used to take him there a lot. And yeah, so I mean, I've been a dog person. I wanted to get a dog as soon as I could as an adult, like when I felt like I was in a good spot in my life. And yeah.
So you had a dog and you enjoyed having a dog and you had the training skills from your other area. How did you do the leap? Tell us how you became
Sure.
professionally a dog trainer.
Yeah, so here's I guess all of the steps. So I did another job right in between working at SeaWorld and becoming a dog trainer. I was a high school biology teacher for about a year and a half. So when I first moved to South Carolina, there was this program that because when I was leaving SeaWorld, I was kind of like, I don't know what I'm gonna do like after this. I had no idea. And when I thought I think I did have the thought of being a dog trainer, but to me, it almost seemed like it would be tough to make the income that I was making as a dolphin and killer whale trainer and stuff like
Hmm.
that. I felt like I would almost go backwards if I tried to do that. I just didn't know much about the industry at all. Um, and so I was worried about that. And one of my coworkers at SeaWorld had become a teacher, a middle school teacher, I think, like just the summer before I did. And so I found this program in South Carolina that you could like kind of, if you had a bachelor's degree, you could just kind of start teaching and get paid a teacher's salary and kind of learn as you go. It's called the GATE program. It's kind of like a just transition type of program. And I was like, oh, I'll learn about it and just kind of, work as I go and figure it out and stuff. And so I tried that for a year and a half and it was just tough. Like it was kind of in the middle of the pandemic, which was crazy, a crazy time for everybody. And I felt like it just wasn't for me. Like it was a little overwhelming, just all the students and trying to learn about like classroom management. And I'm just a very laid back person. Like I'm not really somebody who's great at like cracking down on rules and like the stuff that like the school administration wanted me to do just wasn't my thing. And all the standardized testing that we had them do. Like I knew all the biology stuff and I was like teaching them all the biology stuff, but it was like, the kids just had a hard time with it. And I found that it just wasn't really where I wanted to be. So, um, I was like about halfway through my second year and I just like really felt like I didn't belong there and I didn't want to be doing it. It was really tough. And so I was looking at other options and I just randomly started applying to jobs like locally. And I applied to PetSmart to be a dog trainer. And the store manager there called me and wanted me to come interview. And I actually like canceled my interview with him. I scheduled one and then I just like called last minute and was like, oh no, I don't think I'm going to do it. And like I told him I had something else going on. And I forget, but then he like messaged me and he was like really trying to convince me to come and he really wanted to talk to me and everything. And so finally I was like, okay, I'll just try it. And so I went and sat down with him. He was just the most nice, wonderful person. And he basically just said, like, well, we can help you work quickly towards becoming an area trainer, which is basically a dog trainer who also trains new dog trainers. He's like, I know you have a lot of animal training experience. I feel like you're going to figure this out pretty quickly. And like, he just really like talked me into it. And so I was like, okay, let's do it. And I worked at PetSmart then for almost 2 years. And I did quickly work into the area trainer role after about a year and was training new dog trainers and just doing like basic puppy classes and, group classes and stuff like that. And I loved it. I really did. It was so much fun. I had great people there and dogs and stuff. Yeah. So that's kind of how that all played out.
That's how that all played out. Yeah. It's interesting to see like the transitions and how we wind up where we wind up in life.
Yeah.
What do you like best about being a dog trainer?
Um, I think it's just really fun to see people's relationship with their dog change for the better when people kind of realize like all the fun things they could teach their dog to do. And I like when things click for the dog as well, like when they sort of figure out whatever we're trying to help them with or teach them. Yeah, I mean both parts of it because it's training humans and it's training dogs. So you're working with
Absolutely.
both. But I think it's just nice when the people are really happy and they kind of realize like what they need to do for their dog and when the dog kind of figures stuff out too.
Hmm. Yeah, I always loved that part too. So I have no experience training, dolphins or anything like that. And I've always wondered if for people who have experience with both, if they found it easier to train, the marine mammals in many ways because you had better control of the environment and that you could be sure what was there or not there in a way that in a household you have no idea that a 7-year-old walked away from a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and it was on the table. It was just right there. Was
Yeah.
that your experience, or am I glossing over huge pieces of what was challenging about the environmental aspects of training marine mammals?
No, I think that's exactly correct. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest things that is easier because the environment is more controlled, but also you're on a team of other trainers who are consistently training the animals every day. Where when you work with people in their homes, they have busy life schedules and a lot going on. And so like trying to teach them how to train their dog and also to get them to be consistent with like practicing every day or like doing the homework that you give them can be tough where like if I have a day off from my job working with dolphins, somebody else is going to be training them. Like
Mm-hmm.
100%. They're going to keep doing stuff every day. They're still doing stuff. So there's no like worry about that. The environment is pretty consistent, but you still have random things that go like that would happen with the dolphins too. Like, every once in a while, some random guest would throw an object in the pool and we have to recall all the dolphins and move them up to a different pool and or retrieve the item or something like that. Luckily, all the animals are great about stuff like that. But I have been through like similar situations with dolphins to like what we see with dogs when the environment changes. So for example, like we got new dolphins from another area one time while I was working there, and they were younger, like juvenile dolphins that had lived in a different area. And usually the first few days, it's kind of what you would expect, even from a dog. Like they need some time to other new place. They're not going to same behaviors that they knew before. They're going to, explore. They're not always going to be under stimulus control, hanging out with you, doing what you ask. So yeah, so the environment overall, like we could control what was going on, and under perfect circumstances, the dolphins were doing correct behaviors and doing whatever you asked them to do. But there were always changes too that would randomly pop up. Dolphins also are very social animals, and they go through phases where they would not always behave the way that you wanted. And I think the trainers have a pretty good understanding of like, if they don't do what I ask, it's just not that big of a deal. And so,
Yeah.
like, you have lots of options of how you can handle that. You can either just be like, oh, this dolphin's having an off day. Let's go give him a break in a different pool and he can hang out there. Or, we can try again later, or just like let him have a day where he's not doing a whole lot. But it wasn't like, everything's perfectly controlled and the dolphins are always like robots and doing what you want. They definitely didn't.
No?
There were times where they just would be like, I'm going to go check something out over here, or I'm going to go play with my friend. And, we're just going to swim around and chase each other for a few minutes and we'll come back later. So
Yep.
they had times like that too.
Yeah. They're living creatures. Yep. Just like we are. I always ask my guests to share some words that have meaning to them. And your words were always be a little kinder than necessary. Can you tell me a little bit about how that came into your life and how it, like when did always be a little kinder than necessary come to you? How did it come to you? And what does it mean to you?
Sure. I feel like throughout life, just in general, I try to just, approach everyone with some empathy and understanding and try to see things from their perspective. I'm not somebody who wants to just like, judge somebody or like assume the worst. So I think it's important when you're working with humans, with animals, that we do treat them with kindness because there's probably something internal going on or something that's caused them to behave or act the way that they are. And a lot of times you're not going to get anywhere if you try to just be too abrupt or forceful. Um, Being patient and kind is the best way to teach, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly when, as
Yeah.
far as your question. I don't know when that came about. I can't really say or pinpoint a certain time in my life where I was like, oh, that's how I'm going to live my life. Um, but I guess that's just, yeah, my philosophy that has stuck with me for quite some time.
Yeah. It's a good philosophy. And how does it How does it help you?
Um, as far as like my job right now, I guess, I think it helps me with understanding like the human side of things when a person comes to me with their dog and whatever issues they have going on. I want to kind of fully understand like what is going on in their life and what's going on with the dog and try to be understanding and figure out a plan that works for both them and their dog. And then as far as the dog, I'm going to use the kindest methods that I can to help that dog learn and um, make progress with meeting whatever goals the person has. And I think helping the person kind of understand what those realistic goals are is really important. Education and understanding dog behavior is a big part of it. A lot of people, I think, just they haven't had the chance to learn about dogs and they really just don't know. They're not trying to be mean. I think they just like don't know what their dog is supposed to be doing and have maybe some unrealistic expectations sometimes. And so just kind of helping them along the way is important. And then in my own life, I think with just being a mom and working with my kids, I have two kids. So I have a 5-year-old and a toddler. And I think it's important with them too. Raising kids and training dogs, I feel like is really similar actually, because I feel like it is just a lot of patience and kindness.
I always thought they were really similar. And it was interesting how careful I had to be at times to talk about that so as not to offend people who did not think they were very similar. But the experiences of creating, a consistent environment and responses for my children and for my dogs. And my mother always called it a yes environment, like to make a place where we're going to be, where almost everything that it would occur to you to do is not going to get you in trouble. It's a good thing. So I thought there were tremendous similarities. And I've always wondered how much of that is just my own experience, was that I taught my first dog lesson while pregnant with my first child. So for me, the two careers went hand in hand. I was always learning parenting stuff and always learning dog training stuff simultaneously and going, these are actually not that different.
Right. Yeah.
And then, of course, when I converted over to coaching, it wound up being very similar to all of the education I had done about how to motivate my human clients. Oh, shocking. It's all behavior. It's all behavior.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So if I could give you a magic wand and you could grant a wish for all pet professionals, what would you give us? What would you bestow with your magic wand?
Oh, that's a good question. For all pet professionals, I mean, the dog training industry as a whole is so divided, I think. I mean, I see all the different like sides and stuff, especially through social media. I do some social media like management stuff, so I try to like keep up with what's going on out there. Um, I wish that all dog professionals and pet professionals were more patient,
Okay.
and more kind. Yeah. Since that goes along with my philosophy and everything like that, it's tough. I have seen some crazy things out there with like, puppies and young dogs just put on some tools and different things. And even from speaking to clients in the past, like advice that's been given to them, things that people have told them to do to their dogs that I just think is so inappropriate. And, I mostly just feel bad for the clients because they're getting such inconsistent and confusing information and really like inappropriate advice. And it's really heartbreaking because the puppies and the young dogs are just, their behavior and their future could be suffering because of it. Um, so I wish that all professionals could kind of approach things with more patience and kindness.
Perfect. Thank you. That's awesome. And if people wanted to learn more about you and your work, how could they do that?
Well, they can go to canine-cohesion.com to find our website. Right now, our social media profiles are still under kind of the old business names. We've kind of merged into a new company called Canine Cohesion. So if you find us on social media, you're going to find like the Instagram account is at horizon.dogs, which is the Greenville location. And then the Asheville location is at the Dog Door. And those are part of Canine Cohesion and slowly transitioning to our new company name.
Awesome. Well, I'll link all of that into the show notes. Thanks so much for talking to me today. This has been awesome.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to Unleashed at Work and Home. I invite you to come learn more at colleenpilar.com, where you can be steady, be strong, and be long.